Welcome to our online discussion of May 15, 2015. Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant-Not Dead Yet, and myself, Christian Debré. So, Toujours Vivant-Not Dead Yet is a project of Council of Canadians with Disability. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability right opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practice that discriminate against people with disabilities. There are many reasons to oppose the legalization of assisted suicide and euthanasia. Here are just a few. It's unnecessary. Everyone has the option to commit suicide or to refuse medical care and have a palliative sedation on demand. And we have proof.
Right, exactement.
Okay, Gabriel Bouchard suicide himself in an hospital of Montreal without any law.
Right, he let himself die, and that's on our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujourvivant-not-dead-yet.
Second thing, it's discriminatory. While people without disability receive full suicide prevention services, if they express a wish to die, people with disability will be mostly encouraged and assisted to kill themselves.
And that's based on the idea that life with a disability is a fate worse than death. So of course it's logical to want to die.
But it's not true.
Right.
Life with disability could be very good.
Right.
Choice is an illusion. The choice to die cannot be free as long as people with disability don't have the choice in where and how to live. There is no choice if you doesn't have option.
Right, and it's discrimination that limits our options.
And the last one, safeguard don't work.
Right.
Where these practices are legal, safeguard do not prevent people from disabilities from being wrongly killed.
Right, and we'll see it. We have a news brief about that later.
Yeah, but you could look at Belgium and Holland.
Right.
Something like that. Okay, goal of our online discussion are to give disabled people a place to talk about these issues among ourselves from our point of view, to recognize our experience and expertise in dealing with the discrimination and the medical system, and to take our place in the public debate aside from conservative and progressive. We are more progressive than most progressive.
Right. Usually the debate is seen as between conservatives who oppose assisted suicide and progressives who are in favor, but we're more progressive than the progressives. We have a deeper understanding of the political and social issues behind it, and we oppose.
So our topic of today?
Disability pride.
Right.
Okay. Two important events in disability history happened in the United States in 1990, and that's 25 years ago. On July 26th, President Bush the first signed the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, into law in Washington, D.C.
This is a very, very, very important date for most people living with disability in the world.
Right, because the ADA provides, guarantees access not just to public services, but also to private stores and in private services. And that was one of the first times that people with disabilities were included in civil rights laws. And also in 1990, in October in Boston, the disability rights advocates held a disability pride parade. And our Disability Pride Parade was one of the first such events in the world.
Maybe the first.
Right. We think there might have been one or two before, but we can't verify that. And I remember talking about that at the time. We thought there might have been one that had happened, but it was certainly one of the first. And it continued for several years in Boston. So that was another important event. Our idea was to celebrate the passage of the ADA, which was very important, and to push our movement beyond that goal. Because when you get to a goal, yay, we got there. Now what? So we wanted to keep pushing people towards some new ideas. And one of the ideas is to have pride in ourselves as people with disabilities. We knew that the ADA was not self-enforcing, so that it's up to people with disabilities to drive compliance with the law. In order to do that, people with disabilities would need a sense of entitlement to our rights and pride in ourselves. Yeah. And so that was part of the reason we wanted to put together that kind of event. So,
and maybe if somebody in Canada want to organize one in Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal or elsewhere, they are welcome.
Right, and a pride event is also very important in terms of assisted suicide and euthanasia, because we're not just saying that it's not a fate worse than death to be disabled. With a pride event, we're talking about it's, you know, just being disabled is a good thing. I remember talking to my one of my in-laws and, you know, saying that there's nothing wrong with having a disability. And she said, well, of course there's something wrong with having a disability. So I kind of couldn't figure out how to convince her of that, but then anyway. So at one of our planning meetings, we talked about whether we dared to say we are proud of our disabilities, or whether we just wanted to say we are proud of ourselves as people with disabilities. We ended up making the more timid choice because we really still lacked the confidence at that point in history, the confidence that would be necessary to say we're proud of our disabilities. But I hope that people who are still organizing these events today would be able to declare themselves proud of their disabilities. And I think people like Lady Gaga, when she talks about being proud of being born like who she is and her little monsters, and you know, some progress has been made in that direction, so we can only hope. So during the months of planning, we developed a disability pride platform statement that was a very important part of the event. It was sort of declaring what we felt were some of the important things about our rights that needed to be said. And I'm going today we're going to talk about the parts of that statement. So the first piece is that disability is a natural part of the human experience. Everybody's going to have it.
Everybody, except if you die violently.
Right, right. And if you don't have a disability yourself, you're going to know somebody close who has a disability, even if it's just temporary.
Yeah.
But
everybody will grow old unless you die violently. And going to be old, you lose some ability, so you became disabled.
Right, but everybody wants to try to pretend it doesn't happen, or to pretend you can prevent it, or, you know, when people become disabled, put them off in an institution somewhere so nobody has to see it. But that's that's not a very helpful either to the person who's disabled or to the rest of society, because that doesn't help people adjust to the idea. It doesn't help people feel
disabled
normal.
People are useful to the society.
Right, and it's normal to be disabled. And as long as we think of it as abnormal, then we're going to think that it's worse than you know, being non-disabled, and that it's an excuse.
It's just a fact of life.
Right, it's just a fact of life. So we take pride in ourselves as people with disabilities. As such, we object to unrealistic media portrayals of people with disabilities and the quality of life with a disability.
Either disabled people are diminished and seem to be miserable, they are living a miserable life, or the complete opposite, the super crips, who could do anything with his disability. Both of those images are not true.
Right.
People with disability are normal people.
Right, and at that time, there was a group known as Jerry's Orphans, who were people who had been poster children for the muscular dystrophy telethon when they were children. And they had grown up and said, hey, you know, when you make us out to be like children all the time and make money off of us, that doesn't help us as grown-ups. It doesn't help us live our lives. And that kind of pity is not helpful. In fact, the Muscular Dystrophy Association made a lot of money and didn't spend a lot of it on actually helping people with muscular dystrophy. And actually, the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon this year is no longer going to continue. So that's finally ended. That's kind of good news for us. The next point is all people, regardless of limitation, are entitled to the maximum quality of life. And that includes the basics like food, shelter, clothing, healthcare, medication, and then going a little further to adaptive equipment, transportation, communication, help with activities of daily living, and going a little further, recreation, companionship, and spiritual and personal development, including education and occupation. So learning, both having an education and learning to do a job.
A right as us normal people. We are normal. It's normal to have a disability.
Right, exactly. And it's important to remember that in the US, the idea of healthcare has not been a right. And also housing has not been a right. So that was important for us to push
some
back.
small thing in Canada, it's a little bit better, but for other, it's worse. For housing, in average in Canada, it's a little bit better. Not perfect, but a little bit better.
Right.
But for other thing, we are less evaluated. We are 25 years late.
Right.
Just think about step in front of many public buildings,
Right.
including a restaurant or a government office or whatever.
Right, exactly. The next point is that every human being, regardless of limitation, has the right to self-determination, so to decide what's going to happen to them. And as we said before, self-determination means that the person has to have choices and options available, because if you don't have choices, there isn't a choice to make.
There's no choice if you don't have option.
Right,
That's
exactly.
obvious.
Right. So another point, each person has the right to maintain and express his or her dignity. So that means that a person, to have your dignity questioned by saying that you need to die to have dignity, that's not okay.
You don't have to die to have your dignity.
Right, exactly. And to say that, if you need personal care, that's undignified. No, that's not
true
okay
at all.
Right. Another point, we have a right to maintain our culture without forced assimilation into the dominant culture. And that's especially true for deaf people.
Choice. We should not be forced.
Right. And for a long time, deaf people were forced to learn oral system. And now a lot of deaf people are concerned because kids who are born deaf are given cochlear implants that don't help a lot with their hearing. They help a little, but they deprive people of having access to sign language because everybody then expects them to act oral, even if it's not a very satisfactory system for them. So it's we're still trying to make everybody to be like normal, and that's not necessarily a good thing to do to people.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Not always.
Right.
Could be, but sometimes not.
Right. The next point is that it's primarily the physical, attitudinal, and institutional barriers in the society, not our disabilities, that limit us. As we work to eliminate these barriers, so must the non-disabled society around the world. So we work on it, everybody else has to work on it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Just this week, there was an opening of a clinic in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy in wheelchair tried to access it, but arriving there was one step.
Right.
Easy to be accessible, but nobody think about make it accessible.
Right.
And it's a clinic, a
Right.
medical clinic. Everybody should have access to a medical
Right.
clinic.
See, I can understand 25 years ago that
Maybe,
might have happened, but that kind of thing should not be happening now.
And the border clinic just opening now.
Right. And, you know, that's part of the reason that the Americans with Disabilities Act has been so important, because it's raised people's awareness that access is not just, you know, a government program, that every business has to be responsible
it's a right
for it.
of us.
Right. It's our right. It's a civil rights issue. The next point is that we recognize and embrace the diversity among all people, including within the disability community. And this was very important when we wrote this, because at that time there was a controversy because there was a lesbian couple, one of whom had become severely disabled, and her partner was not being allowed to see her or help with her rehab because they were lesbians. And when I was at the Independent Living Center, a lot of the people there were men who, or most of them were men, who were pretty homophobic, and they were kind of negative about this and making nasty comments. And, you know, this was the same kind of issue that we run into now, where people aren't having a right to choose what kind of situation they live in and to get out of institutions. So
we are inclusive.
Right. The community isn't just white guys in wheelchairs. It's people with all kinds of disabilities. It's people from different racial and ethnic groups, gay and straight and transgender and everything.
Those same rights are for all around the world, for everybody.
Right, right, exactly, right. Also, people with disabilities must be given information about and the opportunity to express our sexuality. We have to be given full reproductive rights and free choice in matters of family planning, including contraception, fertility assistance, abortion, and sterilization, and to be free from coercion and force in these matters. So one thing that happens oftentimes is people assume that disabled people are kind of forever children, that they don't have sex lives.
Be sure, we are not.
So, and so people often don't have sex education, and, you know, parents are afraid to talk to their kids about sex because they don't want their kids having sex. Because, you know, somebody with an intellectual disability, they say, oh, he's not going to understand what's going on. You know, not true. So people need information to make good choices, and they need tools, you know, like contraception, and should not be forced, like the forced sterilization that went on for so long. And right now they're doing things like making people who are on welfare get sterilized, and that includes people with disabilities. That's happening in the United States. That's another kind of forced eugenics.
Eugenic is not a good thing.
Right.
We prove it in the 1920s. Right. And we doing again 100 years after, something goes wrong. It's fishy.
Right, right. It's, you know, it's a problem. And eugenics is part of the root of assisted suicide and euthanasia. We cannot allow that to happen.
And even if it's somebody who could take it a bit too hard, but it's a base of the Second World War.
Right, right. And the last point is that people with disabilities have a right and a duty to participate in the political process. That includes access to information, government activities and meetings, and polling places. So, and the polling process, I should say. So, as you can see, this is not the best statement ever written, and it's not the clearest thing, and it's not the most complete thing ever written. There are a lot of things that we left out because we were working more on something else. But so, for example, we left out the right to live in the community as opposed to live in institutions. We left out a bunch of stuff. But it was, you know, something important to say 25 years ago.
It's a good base to start.
Right, exactly. It was, so this is more of a piece of history than the best document ever written. As for the event itself, we had about 1,500 people, and we had a parade followed by an outdoor rally with disabled speakers, poetry, and music. And just having a bunch of disabled people come up in public and talk about their experience was pretty special. Things like that didn't happen before. Usually it was non-disabled people talking about disabled people. So that was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Similar events continue to happen up to today in other places, mostly other cities. Chicago has one, and New York is having one. So they're generally held on July 26th to correspond with the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I know New York is having a big one this year, and Chicago is as well, because this is the 25th anniversary of the ADA.
And so it's a big anniversary to you too, because right. You was assisting to this signing.
Yeah, I was present.
She was there.
Yeah, I was involved with helping pass the ADA, mostly by working with the people in Boston, people with disabilities, to help them understand what was happening with the law and helping them to communicate with their representatives about their experience of discrimination. That's what we needed to do, and that's what we did. We got the law passed that way. So that was our contribution, and I got to go to the White House to see the bill signed. That was very exciting. So we have a couple of news briefs. First, in Minnesota, a court convicted the group Final Exit Network of assisting the 2007 suicide of Doreen Dunn. Ms. Dunn had chronic pain, but she said she did not know how to kill herself, which seems a little odd to me.
It's a call for help, not I want to die.
Right, exactly. It just seems
my life is not good.
Right.
Somebody help me.
Right. It just seems a little odd. She had pain for a long time that wasn't being.
I doesn't want to continue to live like that.
Right, exactly.
Not I doesn't want to continue to live.
Right.
Therefore gets few words.
Right. But unfortunately, you know, so she talked to the Final Exit people, and they brought over equipment and they helped her kill herself. The jury found that agents of Final Exit Network enabled Ms. Dunn to kill herself through their words and actions. The group was also convicted of tampering with a crime scene and moving a body, since members removed the equipment used by Ms. Dunn in her suicide. The Final Exit Network faces a fine of up to $33,000.
It's a bit too less, but for an organization, it's okay. Could be a bit hard.
For our organization, it would kill us.
Oh yeah, for it's a lot.
But for them, I think they have
a lot of money, so maybe it's not so hard. Right. But nobody was convicted.
Right, right. None of the individuals were convicted for various reasons. So,
just the group.
Right, just the group. Also, earlier this week, Albert Heringa was cleared of all criminal responsibility in the 2008 death of his mother in the Netherlands. Mr. Heringa was initially convicted in 2013 of having provided the drugs that she used to kill herself, but at that time he received no penalty.
So you're guilty,
right?
But you doesn't receive anything as punishment,
which is very typical in cases like this. However, he decided to appeal his conviction. And
was not enough to be free of any punishment.
Right. You know, that wasn't good enough. He decided to appeal the conviction, and this time he was acquitted. So let's look at this situation. This is a country where she could have had legal euthanasia, right?
Yeah.
Except for maybe she didn't qualify because she wasn't actually, you know.
She was mistreated as pain.
Right.
Something like
or
that.
Whatever.
And they don't do anything.
Right.
They was not qualified, but they killed her.
Right. I mean, in the Netherlands, they're pretty lackadaisical about their, who they let have euthanasia. So if they wouldn't let somebody have euthanasia, that means that the person was probably in pretty good shape. So what is her son doing, giving her, pills to kill herself? I don't know.
She bothered him
it
too
smells
much.
bad.
Yeah, something
It
like
doesn't
that.
pass the sniff test, as we say in the law. So as far as I'm concerned, this is yet another example of the slippery slope.
Yeah, somebody say it doesn't exist.
Right.
But
Right.
this is one other proof, and there's many, many other proof that it's existing. In any country who it's a law to permit, that there existing a law to permit those kind of thing, the first year is always one number, and always increasing every year. I don't know how you call it, but for me, it's a slope, and it's slippery. It's going down every year.
Right. Right. I mean, this is outside of the law, but they're allowing it. And every time something like that happens, that's a step down the slippery slope. And, we think if you follow our Facebook page, you'll see every week I have little, articles like this, the things that happen like this. And, it's ridiculous for people to say there's no slippery slope, because you see stuff like this all the time. So, contacting us, if you want to watch our videos, and we have videos going back to September of 2013, you can search for Euthanasia and Disability either on Google Hangouts on Air or on YouTube, and you'll find my YouTube channel where we have our video of Gabriel Bouchard.
Worth to be seen.
Yes.
This
really
guy
should.
died because he chose to die, and he died in a modern hospital in a modern country without any law.
Right. And the point, the sad thing is that if he had had services and respect that he needed as a person with a disability, he might have made a different choice.
Yes.
So,
we was both there.
It was both. It was
and
very
I see
sad.
him a few times more after.
Yeah. So, and as we translated it into English, so they're English subtitles.
Yeah.
If you would like to participate directly in our broadcast, you can send your email address to me, and I will send you a link to join us live, and I'll send you that just before we start, within a half hour before we start, and I'll give you our email address in a minute. For more information on the subjects that we talk about here, you can visit our Facebook page, which is at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet, all one word. Also, you can go to our website, which is tvndy.ca. You can email us at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow me on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks for Christian.
Thank you, Amy.
And thanks.
See you next week.
For joining.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.